Hey guys, I'm Ryan Nolan, and I'm the new CTL for government for the 2017-2018 school year. A little bit about me, really quick. I teach AP Government at Hampton. I teach to 11th and 12th graders, but the plans that I've created here and these previews are intended to be used for all government teachers throughout Uplift. Whether you teach on level or AP Government, whether you teach 10th or 11th or 12th graders, um, a little bit more. This is my first year working with IB in the MYP program. So some of the formatting things are a little bit new to me. Um, this is my sixth year as a government and economics teacher, so I feel pretty prepared for this. With that said, we'll be learning a lot of things together, especially about IB and the MYP program. For those of you that have taught with Uplift before, you know that these unit previews are a new resource for our network. Throughout these unit previews, I will highlight the main concepts and skills that have been built into the unit, as well as explain some of my rationale for some choices that I made throughout the unit. As I go through this information, I suggest stopping the video, jotting down any questions that you have. And if you don't see it in this video, or if we don't talk about it, then feel free to reach out to me with any of those questions. My email is here on the first page, and I'll give it to you again at the end. So let's get started with Unit 1. All right, so in Unit 1, we talk mostly about the building blocks of the society, right? We talk about all of the things that go into the creation of the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution, and we want our scholars to find some IB global mindedness throughout this first unit. We want them to see where the United States' place is throughout history and throughout the world. So throughout Unit 1, scholars should get a chance to explore major documents and major ideas, as well as Enlightenment philosophers that all kind of are the building blocks to our own government. I really recommend that you take your time with this unit and make sure that scholars have a really good understanding of the basics of the founding documents and the structure of the government, because it will help you move throughout the rest of the semester more easily if the scholars can learn and retain as much of this solid foundation right up front, rather than having to go back to it over and over and over again. Okay, so because IB and the MYP program is new to most of us government teachers, as a network, we think that these IB strategies will be a great way to tie entire units together with one block of learning, rather than each of our lessons feeling isolated from one another. So the way that we do that is we create the key concepts, the related concepts, and the statement of inquiry. The statement of inquiry that I created is basically the theme that I want to view the entire unit from. The SOI that I chose for Unit 1 is a government built by the people is the best type of government. I created this SOI because I wanted my scholars to be able to have similar debates to what we would think that the founders had while they crafted the Constitution, discussing what type of government do we want, what does that look like, how does that affect us, who's in charge, all of those kinds of questions. This particular statement of inquiry is also going to be our major debatable question for the unit, and it is a question that ties in several times throughout the unit itself. So I really recommend that you give your scholars some freedom to explore this question and see many different government structures. You should see that some of them have a lot of prior knowledge from world geography and then from world history, especially if you're teaching one of the later grade levels like 11th or 12th. The other debatable question I created is, how much power should the federal government have? This question is pointed more towards the latter half of the unit and leads well into the rest of the semester. This question really sets up Units 2 and 3, and then the power that the people have in Unit 4. As we look at the conceptual question portion, these are questions that should lead scholars to have answers for the debatable questions and really drive home some of the major pieces of knowledge that we want our scholars to walk away from this unit with. Asking scholars why the U.S. created a democracy, how federalism works, and more generally, why laws need to be able to change over time are concepts that scholars need to help them be successful in this unit and in the rest of the semester. The last portion of the inquiry questions are the factual questions. These are kind of the concrete details or concrete pieces of knowledge that every scholar needs to have. However, only having these factual details will probably leave the scholar behind a little bit. Moving on to the assessment portion, there is a traditional multiple choice and essay exam for this unit. I may or may not use it. You have a choice to use it. With that said, you should take some time throughout the semester to make sure that scholars have a number of opportunities to work with multiple choice questions and short essays, because that is how they are evaluated on the CA and the EOC exams at the end of the quarter and the semester. So they should definitely have some practice with that. Each of my units has a performance project. Each project is designed to help scholars develop skills that are necessary to completing a full historical investigation during the second semester, and that's something that we'll talk more about at Collaboration Day. But if you're curious right now, you can find more information on Blackboard in the Humanities course structure and the research handbook. So the Unit 1 assessment asks scholars to create a free WordPress blog and create 2 blog entries explaining the importance of 2 of the 7 principles of government in order to convince young adults to vote in the upcoming election. In this project, scholars are explaining the purpose of their chosen principles and showing real young people why utilizing those principles is important. If a scholar uses the principles of checks and balances, they should use an article about the Supreme Court ruling on a case to support their argument. That's just one example of how scholars should support their work. Each of the blog entries is designed to be a few paragraphs long. It should be interesting. It should be engaging for their readers, which could be you, but they're also public blogs, so it could be other people as well. And they should include hyperlinks to the websites and articles that they reference in their paper. In my class, I plan to build some time at the beginning of the year, perhaps during the Student Leadership Academy time, to allow my scholars to create their own blogs, and I plan to use those blogs pretty regularly throughout the year to house some of their work. If the blogs sound like a hassle to you, you don't have to use them, but technology is an essential part of our scholars' lives, and they need to work with tech as often as possible. You could take this time to collaborate with your tech teacher on your campus with this project as well. If you already have an online platform for your classes, feel free to use that instead. Or you could just have them complete this on paper, but you'll need a way to check their cited sources. Because most of the network is currently in the process of shifting government and econ from 12th grade to 10th grade, most of us are probably not used to using IB rubrics to create assessments. That's okay right now. Basic MYP rubrics are created by IB for first years, third years, and fifth year. Our scholars in 10th grade will be fifth year MYP students, so we don't need to merge any rubrics together. It's important that we assess our scholars using these MYP rubrics because that's how they're being assessed in most of their other courses, and it's a variation of how they'll be assessed when they move into the DP courses in the next few years. Using the same rubrics as your colleagues allows your scholars to become more familiar with the expectations, how to read the rubrics, and how to gauge their own performance on tasks that they can compare to the given rubric. With that said, for this project, I'm planning to use Criterion A, knowing and understanding. But if you want to, you could also use parts of Criterion C, which is the thinking and communicating. I chose Criterion A because it's very early in the semester and there has not been a lot of time for deep research and investigation. Also, each criterion needs to be used at least twice throughout the year. The other reason I chose Criterion A is because I want to assess scholars' knowledge and understanding of the basics of the government, because this knowledge will be essential throughout the rest of the semester. On each unit plan, you should find the rubric under the assessment section. The far right column of the rubric is the content-specific descriptors. This is where we as government teachers get to apply each rubric directly to the task we're asking scholars to complete. When you complete your own rubrics for other assessments, I recommend starting with the 7-8 range descriptors and determining exactly what you want to see in an A paper, and then move on to the 5-6 descriptors and determine what is acceptable for a B paper, etc. I will have some MYP rubric information available on Blackboard in the resources section. Blackboard is really your hub for all of the materials that I discuss in this preview. While CTLs no longer provide completed lesson plans and deliverables for each day, the resources section of Blackboard is where you can find some of the resources, websites, deliverables, organization strategies, and other things that I find useful when I'm planning my own lessons. Okay, let's talk about the TEKS for a minute. For those of you new to teaching government, you've probably already noticed that the TEKS have two main problems. They are either far too broad or they have way too much information. You may have also noticed that there are a lot of student expectations to teach in a very short amount of time. Most of the early TEKS have way too much information. You should not feel like you have to highlight every detail in each TEK. For example, in TEK 1A, you're going to cover law of nature and nature's God and unalienable rights during the Declaration of Independence, so you don't have to cover it twice. The rest of TEK 1A will be covered in your Enlightenment lesson, along with the important parts of 1B and C, but also feel free to leave out most of the religious traditions and biblical laws, Moses and William Blackstone. Most of that is either prior knowledge from world history, geography, and none of it's going to be assessed. For the Founding Fathers, I usually teach the big guys, like Madison and Jefferson. I touch on the other Federalist writers, John Jay and Alexander Hamilton, and teach that most of the other names that they're going to see are anti-federalists. When you look on the scope and sequence, look for the bolded TEKS in each unit. These are the TEKS that are directly assessed on the CA, so you want to make sure that you cover each of those as best as possible. We're not going to break all of these TEKS down right now, but if you have questions about what is essential and what is not, check the daily lesson plans at the end of the unit plan, check the topics and the key points, and feel free to shoot me an email about it. Speaking of daily lesson plans, if you look at my daily lesson plans and feel like you want to change up the schedule, that's totally fine. But there are a few lessons and TEKS that you definitely need to teach. Some of the lessons that I definitely recommend that you keep from Unit 1 are Lesson 3 about the Declaration of Independence, Lesson 5 and 6 about the Constitution and the Federalist struggles to ratify, and Lesson 7 about federalism. Lesson 7 is one of the toughest ideas for scholars to wrap their mind around in the entire semester, so make sure that you hit this one well and that you spiral back to the idea of federalism several times throughout the semester. Okay, I'm not going to go through each day on the unit plan, but I will say that I found it really difficult to squeeze all of this information into the 7 days originally allotted on the scope and sequence, so I didn't. I changed from 7 days to 8 days on Unit 1, but that means that I had to take a day away from Unit 2 so that we could teach everything before CA1. You can find just about everything you need on Blackboard, whether in the resources section or in the curricular document section. The curricular document section shows you most of the things that Uplift gives you, and this is also where you'll find a lot of stuff like unit plans, annotated model lessons, and other useful pieces of information based on those things. If you're looking for teaching strategies, remember to go back to the resources section. So that's all I wanted to say about Unit 1 right now. Please let me know if you have any questions about the unit or where to find materials or any other things I can help you with. Here's my email, rnolan@uplifteducation.org. Here's also my phone number if you guys would rather call or text me instead. Just remember that you can do it.